Welcome to another edition of the Indian AvGeek.
This week, we are different in couple of ways. Number one, I'm recording this sitting in my hotel room in Baku. Azerbaijan in this process became my country number 50, and I'm here for work for the next few days. I flew here non-stop from Delhi. Indigo flies this route daily from Delhi to Baku. It is timed at about 4.5 hours. We reached in about 4. And interestingly, the same crew turns around and flies back to Delhi. And due to tailwinds, they barely make it back to stay within crew flying limits. I'd bought a seat and a sandwich combo, and though the chicken jungli sandwich remains as tasty as ever, I was massively turned off seeing Indigo crew serve Coke not in cans but in paper cups poured from a 500 ml bottle. Lots of young families on the flight, even older couples. Azerbaijan seems to be the newer and cheaper version of Turkey, though going by the fare I flew on, booked a week out, it wasn't cheap at all, and the yields must have been pretty handsome for Indigo. It's awesome how direct flights open new destinations, and so many more new places will open from next year as Indigo's XLRs enter service.
We have a slightly different format this week of the show. Instead of inviting a guest and discussing with them what's going on in the industry or a current topic, I thought, I'll just focus on a variety of topics and give my own unfiltered thoughts. That's usually not a good idea if you're running a creative agency. So we will divide this episode into 3 different parts. We'll talk about airlines, we'll talk about airports and what's going around in their world, and finally we'll come to OEMs, and we'll try to be as specific as possible from an Indian perspective. So the first airline I want to talk about today is our favorite, MasalaJet. And MasalaJet has mentioned that it has made a profit of 150 odd crores first quarter of the year, which is April, May, June. Just came out with the news a few days back. Please keep in mind that Indigo, undisputed market leader, made a profit of 2,700 crores in the same period, and SpiceJet has made about 158.75 crores to be exact. So it's a massive difference between the two airlines. SpiceJet also mentioned that it's a 20% drop, almost 19.65%. So we'll say it's a 20% drop for the June quarter. Last year they had made about 198 crores. And this year they're at about 159. During the same quarter, interesting to see that their revenue from operations also went down by about 14 point something percent to about 1,646 crores. And the amount last year in the same period was about 1,917 crores. Quite a dip in revenue, quite a dip in profits. But one thing we must applaud, and this is something we spoke briefly on the very first episode of the Indian AvGeek also when Ameya had come in, that SpiceJet continues to lead the industry with the highest domestic load factor. It's astounding. They have reported a load factor of 91%, nominal. And of course, during the same press release, they also mentioned that 3,000 crore qualified institutional placement, the QIP. Again, we discussed during the same episode. They are expecting it to be completed by the end of September 2024. Let's see how that goes further ahead. Hopefully, it'll strengthen their finances. The Indian airline market definitely needs more than two strong players. Rahul Bhatia said that himself during the Indigo event. If that third strong player besides the Air India group and Indigo, will that be Akasa or will that be SpiceJet? And SpiceJet has been the cat with multiple lives so far. And if you're a SpiceJet fan, you would definitely want the airline to keep at it, hopefully do better. They used to be a very strong player in the industry. They are a listed company on the BSE and the NSE, and both stock exchanges actually have put SpiceJet under the long-term ASM, which is additional surveillance measure. Let's move forward to Akasa. Akasa has been on a tear of late. They have about 24 aircraft in their fleet now, 24 737 Maxes, and they just turned 2 a week or so back, about 10 days back, and now they have a 5th destination in their global network. I think they recently announced flight to Kuwait. This is besides all the massive expansion that they have planned for. They are now in 5 cities in the Middle East. They are operating to Doha, they are operating to Riyadh, they are operating to Jeddah and Abu Dhabi. And they are not just operating from Mumbai. For example, Jeddah is also served via Ahmedabad. It's a direct flight. They've been pretty aggressive in really getting into Middle East. If you listen to what their executive management team has to say from a financial result point of view also, how Vinay Dubey, one of the most brilliant minds in Indian aviation, was talking about strategy to turn Akasa profitable very soon, and he gave an example of Indigo, which had turned profitable within 4 years of starting operations, I think. And he spoke the usual things, to be honest. He spoke about improving yields, reducing costs, and hopefully having higher capacity. But so much of that also depends on Boeing. We'll talk about Boeing later in the show. They want to, of course, go aggressive on international expansion. That obviously is much more profitable than operating domestically. Plus, in some places you get oil cheaper. So that helps, especially when 40% of your business costs are related to fuel. They are ahead of SpiceJet in market share. They had about 5%, 4.8% in June. They carried about 11 million passengers cumulatively. So things are looking fine. Things are looking good. They do have a profitability problem. And Tarun Shukla wrote a very detailed piece on that over at Economic Times a few days back. So if you haven't had a chance to read that, I'll advise you to read it. It's quite interesting. But if you hear what their CFO has to say, Ankur Goyal, the usual aviation executive talk, he wanted revenue per seat available kilometer to improve, CASK, cost available per seat kilometer, to go down, and he spelled that out as his path to profitability. Undoubtedly, Akasa has brilliant people, brilliant minds in its management team. Some things which are going well for them include how they are operating as far as on-time performance is concerned. 77% of their flights were landing on time, which is, as I read, 6% better than Indigo. But then again, the number of flights that Indigo operates and number of flights that Akasa operates, there's a massive difference. When there was this CrowdStrike outage last month grounded many flights, many airlines. Akasa did not cancel a single flight. That's a testament to how well their IT operations are doing. And the last airline for this week at the Indian AvGeek we'll discuss would be Air India. Now, Air India is about to add Kuala Lumpur to their network starting mid-September, 15th of September. They'll have a daily flight from Delhi to Kuala Lumpur on an A320neo. And this comes after their recent expansion. They've added Phuket and they've added Ho Chi Minh City as well. They are solidifying their Southeast Asian network. And undoubtedly, what they're trying to do, besides the point-to-point demand, which is very high, of course, they're also creating feeder markets for their European and North American routes via Delhi. So if you look at their schedule, it actually allows for good connections on Air India's European network via Delhi on both the legs. So that's good to see, because not just the airport operator but the government has gone on record. They want Delhi and Mumbai to be developed as global hubs. So if Air India is taking these steps in that direction, all the power to them. With the addition of Kuala Lumpur, now Air India flies to non-stop to Bangkok, to Phuket, Ho Chi Minh City, Hong Kong, and Singapore as well. I was on one of their Singapore flights on an A320, five and a half hour flight. Not the most enjoyable, especially when there is no IFE. And for me, IFE basically means the moving map. I terribly missed that, but yeah, the seats weren't too great either. The food was alright. Air India looking at other destinations in the region. There was, I remember again, during the same trip, we also went to Philippines, and around that time I was reading how Air India is planning to serve Manila. There was also talk of Philippines Air starting a Delhi-Manila flight. I haven't heard about that since, but yeah, maybe Air India will expand to Manila. There can be Taipei as well, maybe Jakarta. And if you look at all these points, whether it's Manila or Taipei or Jakarta, the traffic is nothing to be scoffed at. So as Air India expands its fleet, you would obviously see a lot of potential for the airline to meet this demand, whether that's VFR or tourism or business, and developing its feeder connections also. How the operator is talking about Delhi Airport becoming the first Indian airport to achieve net zero carbon emission airport status under ACI's Airport Carbon Accreditation Program. I don't know much about this, but on paper and on this press release, it certainly looks very, very impressive. Delhi, of course, remains the undisputed champion of international travel from India. Air India, of course, expanding big time from Delhi. Indigo is expanding its Central Asia routes from Delhi. I spoke briefly about how I'm in Baku and I flew to Baku on a direct Indigo flight from Delhi. And there are, of course, again, I keep hearing how they want to expand to other stans also within Central Asia, and how good their Georgia route, the Tbilisi route, is actually doing. So boost in capacity to London with 777s and A350s by Air India. So Delhi, from an international departure point of view, for Indian carriers, by far the number one, followed by Mumbai, Chennai, and then Hyderabad. This is just for Indian carriers. If you're thinking of operations by foreign carriers also, Delhi will remain on top, but the rest of the order would change. Similarly, from a domestic airport point of view, domestic traffic and departure point of view, again Delhi by far the biggest airport. If you look at Indigo, it's the biggest airport for Indigo. If you look at Air India Group, again the biggest for them. Delhi, followed by Bengaluru actually, and then Mumbai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Chennai, Ahmedabad, Pune, and Guwahati. So from a new terminal perspective also, on the 17th of August, the new Terminal 1 became operational. It's the same terminal which had an unfortunate accident on 28th of June. And since then it's been shut. But they are now opening a large part of that terminal. They have already opened it on the 17th of August. It's part of the airport expansion plan. Its capacity to handle about 40 million passengers annually. It will certainly take the load of T2 and T3, and some of us who follow Indian aviation closely would have seen the long queues at security, especially in the last few days. The press release also mentioned how SpiceJet would be the first to move to Terminal 1 with about 13 flights. Indigo will move about 34 flights from Terminal 2 from September the 2nd. After these flights are shifted, it said that Terminal 1 will operate at 25% of its pre-disaster capacity, which is before 28th June. So hopefully it'll work out well for Dial. Yeah, they do have few things going on at the terminal in terms of better passenger experience, mobile check-in, tray retrieval systems, and self-baggage drops, etc. Though I always wonder if self-baggage drop is enhances passenger experience. I mean, they are basically telling us to do their work. We'll move to what's been happening at Jewar. Jewar, of course, the airport in Noida, which is expecting to be open. It was expected to be initially open by the end of this year. Won't happen. Now they're saying April 2025. Hopefully that stands. That timeline stands. They mentioned that the work on the runway has been completed, which is good to know, which is nice, and hopefully they'll stick to the timeline now. We'll see finally a second airport in the Delhi NCR region. I'm not counting Hindon. From Delhi and Jewar, let's go all the way to Seattle, and let's go to Boeing. Now, the show's name is the Indian AvGeek. One of the promises we made right from the very first episode, actually from the intro episode, which is not counted as first, that we will focus on aviation news from an Indian perspective, and Boeing as one of the most important OEMs and aircraft manufacturers. Very important for Akasa, 200 plus 737s on order. So mighty critical for Akasa. Boeing is mighty critical for the Air India Group as well. From an overall aviation ecosystem in the country, they are a very important player, obviously. So it's good to read that senior industry executives are feeling good finally about Boeing. This past week, United's CEO, Scott Kirby, one of the most critical voices on Boeing actually, met with Robert Ortberg, who's the brand new CEO of Boeing. They had lunch together in Dallas. Scott Kirby's LinkedIn, which I came across, has been highly appreciative that he wrote. His engineering background at Rockwell Collins, combined with an instinct to be close to his frontline teams in Seattle, that's where, by the way, he'll be based, not in Chicago, unlike other Boeing CEOs of the past, makes for a winning combination, Kirby wrote on Thursday. It was clear from our discussion that he is 100% engaged, understands the cultural changes needed to turn things around, and is committed to listen to his employees and customers. Oddbug actually has shifted his base to Seattle, has been around the 737 factory at Renton. I think he went there on his very first day. He also met, by the way, with the CEO of American Airlines, Robert Isom. Kelly Oddberg also had something nice to tell his colleagues at Boeing post the meeting with these two senior executives. So things hopefully are looking up over at Boeing, over at Seattle. Very, very important to have a strong, healthy competitor to Airbus. It's already a duopoly. We can't afford a monopoly for sure. And with that hope of a stronger aviation ecosystem, not just in India, but across the world, we come to the end of the third episode of the Indian AvGeek. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did not, let me know. If you did, it'll be great if you let me know. Till the next time, maybe from another part of the world, probably back from my hometown of Delhi, it's goodbye and happy flying.